All right, and we are live. Aloha, hello. I am Heidi Love, your host for Real Life Talk, and I'm so happy to be here tonight with the other host, Timothy Earle, who's been gone for a couple weeks. We've both been traveling, so you missed me and then you missed him. Now you have us both back tonight, so we're excited about that, or I'm excited about that. And tonight we have some really great topics for you. And tonight is all about relationship. And if you stay on the talk with us, you're going to get to hear mine and also Timothy's maybe favorite or really important relationship tool. And we're going to share that with you. So stay on with us and share this with your friends. This is for anybody who wants their relationships to be easier, funner, more harmonious, and closer, have better connection. And it's not just with your lovers or your partners, but with kids, coworkers, friends, etc. We're going to let you know how that works. So would you like to introduce yourself, Timothy?
My name's Timothy Earle. I have two businesses. One is called Earle Consulting, where I work with families and family dynamics. And the emphasis is on youth that are struggling or young adults that are failing. And then I also have another website, which you'll see scrolled right there, timothyearle.com. It's in development and it focuses mostly on individual and couple. But I do a lot of different things as Heidi does. We both offer discovery calls. So go to our websites, find our phone number, message us, and set up a discovery call. That's 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, where we listen in on what it is that you are wanting to expand or develop in your life, and then we'll explain our services. We really want to work with you, are appropriate for what we're able to offer. And if we don't think that we have the skills or the tools to help you, then we will do our best to fit you with somebody else. Please don't hesitate to reach out. And that's one of the reasons we do this talk, offering idea, our think, how we work. And also, if you want to come on to Real Life Talk and discuss a particular topic with your partner or individually, reach out to us through email or message us through our phone numbers and let us know, and we'll do the interview process, make sure it's a good fit for the show, and we'll have you on. So the 3 heads or 4 heads here rather than 2.
Yeah,
I'm really excited about
it. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, yeah, it's really fun. We love to have people on live, and we love to coach people live or have you talk about something you love to talk about. So definitely reach out to us. That's super fun for Timothy and I. And I wanted to mention that if you're on Facebook, we love to interact with you. We love to know that you're here. So just type in the comment box a hello, or you can ask us questions. You can say something you want to know about relationship tonight, or tell us which relationship you're struggling with, parent, child, a friend, a brother, sister, anything. That would be great to know too, but we love to know you're here. So make sure you drop a hello in the chat box, comment box. Hi, Cindy. Aloha. And it's really fun. We have people from all over the United States and sometimes often different countries too. So that is really great. I think what inspired me to do this topic, Timothy, is that people always often ask me what I do. And that's never been a comfortable thing for me. I'm not great at tooting my own horn. And I'll say, I work with love and relationships. And I'll get these kind of comments. Oh, well, you only work with couples? I'm single. Or, oh, you just do couples work? And people, I have found, automatically associate relationship coaching or counseling with couples work. And couples work is a huge part of what I do and a huge part of what I love, but it is not all that I do. And it's not the only relationships that we deal with. And so I want to talk about skills tonight and how these basic things apply to all our relationships. So that's kind of an overview of the topic we're going to cover tonight. You have any comments on that, Timothy?
Yeah, let's both just expand what we do for a minute. So I just give it in a nutshell. I have a retreat room here in my home. I have people who fly from the mainland who stay with me in our group home, or they stay at a nearby place, and they do sometimes out in nature, what I would call journey work with me, where I take them and I guide them to places, and they actually get to sit with the mana or the environment, and I run them through whatever exercises are appropriate for their goals. I also take people and couples and groups on day-long journeys here at the temple. And so some people book an entire 5-day weekend where we're doing journey work and we're doing some outdoor visitation, and then they have integration days. That's one whole kind of deep conversation for some people who are interested in doing what I call journey work or guided work. However, I also work on Zoom with couples, individuals around sexuality, intimacy, love, as well as transition, grief, changing jobs, changing careers. And then I also work with family system, and I've coached people who are CEOs or executives that on leadership skills and other things that they were interested in being. My favorite right now is working with people who want to increase their awareness and thus their ability to be more conscious throughout the day and to live a more conscious life. And we're not going to get into what is consciousness right now. So just notice I'm all over the place, even though I have one business that focuses on family dynamics and youth that are struggling and young adults failing to launch. And I have another business that seems to focus on journey work and sexuality, intimacy. But in reality, there's a lot more to that. There's some as well. Why do I do so much? Well, I like playing in so many different areas. And Heidi and I really jive together because we're very similar. And it's hard for us to put ourselves into a niche and eliminate all the other great little niches. It's almost like we each need 5 women. You go. What else do you like?
Thanks, Timothy. I wanted to say hi, Chantal, and you didn't miss much. We're just talking about kind of the overview of our topic tonight and the different ways Timothy and I work within the relationship box. That's not a box because Timothy and I don't like boxes. And I just want to pipe in and say that I've actually had some work from Timothy. And one thing I would say about working with Timothy personally, for myself, like me not working with him, but me calling him as a coach or counselor. And I think that what touched me a lot about working with Timothy is that things that my shadow side, things that I was ashamed about, or things that I don't, things that I'm ashamed of, I could really reveal to him in safety, and he could show up in such a non-judgmental way that I could reveal more, and then give me feedback when I asked for it, because I'm a person that likes feedback. I like an opinion or suggestion or discernment or looking at a situation, and I like to have counsel to seek for that. And he is somebody that could give me that when I asked for it. And when I didn't want it, he was there to give empathy and reflect back what I'm going through and help me unfold in my own knowledge, but all in such a safe space. And I'm not a person that feels safe with many people. So I just want to throw that out there, that the unfolding that can happen in a safe container that Timothy creates is pretty special. So thank you for those times you worked with me.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for seeing me and receiving me.
Yeah, thank you. And I thought I want to pop in, and I think I want to share this in story more, so maybe you guys can see how some of these things can work in your life. And I want to apologize for the lighting in here today. I'm going to see if I can move a little bit. I don't have a whole lot of choice today. I'm traveling. I'm actually in Utah today. The Salt Lake City. So I'm thinking about what I think is fundamental to relationships, and meaning fundamental skills that help all relationships. And it's been my experience in the last 20 years that the same basic set of tools applied differently work in many different scenarios. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So I know that Timothy teaches most or all of these skills too. And some of my main topics that I teach or help people with are communication, codependency, boundaries, grief, uh, sexuality and intimacy. So those are kind of an overview of topics in which we teach skills in. Would you add any?
Addiction,
Addiction.
recovery,
Forgot
sober
that
living.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sober living, addiction recovery, something I live every day. So I don't even think of it as a skill anymore because it's so automatic. But I'm glad you brought that up because it is a learned skill. It's a skill I learned, Yeah, and a skill we have with other people. So in my work in the last 20 years, I've always worked with couples. I mean, couples always need this work, right? But every other relationship needs it too. And I want to share a story that I thought of today. I was contracted with hospice, Vitas Hospice and Heartland Hospice in the San Francisco Bay Area. I had a 9-year contract with them to start a holistic program. And we did two things. We did therapeutic touch during the dying process. So helping families feel empowered. The patients got touch from a therapist, and then the families learned how to apply touch and breath and presence to the dying person so that you could be present with them. That is a relational skill, touch and presence. So touch and presence can be used in every relationship you have, parent-child, dying process, of course, in coupleship. Um, One of the skills that I took to hospice was coaching families during the dying process. And so when we're under a lot of stress or there's grief or death happening, all the character defects, all the misery go arounds, all the things that come up in relationship usually get triggered. And I want to tell this one particular story that really touched me. So if you've listened into a lot of our calls, you'll know that Timothy and I both work with trauma, with past trauma. And this particular family had a lot of trauma in the past. And there was a loved one, it was the father, and the father wouldn't die, wouldn't die, wouldn't die. People kept saying, why isn't he dying? Why is he hanging on? Why is he hanging on? And I would talk with the family aside from him and say, unfinished business is a big reason that people don't die. They want to finish the business with their family. They want to uncover things. They want to have reconciliation. And the daughter was like, well, he's my dad. I'm really upset with him, but I would never say that because he's dying and it's just rude, and was very polite, was very appropriate in her eyes of not bringing anything up to ruffle anybody's feathers. So for weeks, I talked to her dad, I talked to them, and I finally told her, I don't think your dad is going to let go until you confront him on the things that you've been talking about. And he actually sexually abused her. And so she said, well, I'll do it. I'll do it if you're in the room. And so I sat down with her and her dad. Her dad was in the hospice bed. She was in the chair and I was in the chair. And I helped her to feel the safety to bring up to her father, hey, I'm in fear. I don't want to cause problems as you're dying, but I'm really hurt and angry. And these are the ways that it's affected my life, what you did to me when I was young. And she cried her eyes out and he cried, and he was able to tell her how terribly sorry he was before he exited. And they had a very long, touching conversation that helped close that. It didn't fix everything. He can't undo what he did, and she'll never not have the results from what he did. But they were able to get present and real with each other, and he passed that night. She had peace in her heart because she got to say the things to her dad she never had the courage to say, and tell him the truth about what it did to her. And so those are skills that you learn in communication, in having self-awareness, in having boundaries and self-respect, in confronting someone in respectful conflict. These are skills that are universal in relationship. So I'm going to let you jump in, Timothy, before I go on to a different story.
Just really touched by the story. So many people don't get the opportunity to tell the person who has crossed their boundaries slash abused them, how they felt and what their experience was ever, let alone tell their own father, in this case, prior to them passing. And so I just feel this angst at first when you were telling the story, and a lot of empathy for this person and for the father. People don't have a trader, but and then I felt this just release of weight that she was probably carrying for so long, and the fact that she got to tell him. And I was curious if he responded or what his response was.
Yeah, he did respond. He responded by holding her hand, and he was shaky. You know, he's an elderly man, but he held on to her hand and he cried also. And he was in deep repentance with her. And he was able to acknowledge, because we had weeks leading up to this. I had weeks talking to him about it, weeks talking to her about it without the two of them talking. So they were really set up to win with support, right? With support of talking to each other. And I didn't tell either one of them what to say, but I helped them discover within themselves what was true for them, what was safe to say, how to say it in a kind way. And so those are some of the skills, right? But I didn't feed him what to say in any way. What was said was from his heart. And he held her hand, he was crying, and he said, I've regretted what I've done our whole lives, and I've been forever grateful and undeserving that you never left my life. She was somebody that never quit talking to him, never went away. She was the good, dutiful daughter to the family, and it made her really resentful and crazy, for a long time. But he acknowledged and saw her for how hard it must have been for her to continue to show up, for how unacknowledged the secret was, for how the mom never protected her, and how he wishes he could have given his life to go back and change it, and that he couldn't, and that he was very sorry for all the hurt and harm that it caused her and the family.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing the other side. Yeah, if we come back to skills, I'm going to try to leave the intensity of this, just leave it encapsulated, and thank you for the share. But if we come back to the skills, you're really there in a way as a coach, holding each person individually and helping them get to a place where they're able then to have this important conversation. You're not actually leading the conversation, you're just in a way getting each person to do the steps they need to get to where they can actually talk about it. And I'm sure that you were there too to help them listen to one another actively and stay connected in their communication style. And so beautiful, and definitely something that I practice when I'm working with families or couples, two people or more, which is often having them speak with me individually, get assessed, can we actually do this dyad conversation in a meaningful way? Because sometimes one or both parties are not, and it doesn't make sense to even try. But if we can get them all there, and then we actually teach each person what it means to listen, truly listen, and be present, it's amazing the miracles that can happen, things that can get released once and for all. Some people call this forgiveness. Really, forgiveness begins with simply listening, taking the information in, and expressing ourselves vulnerably, as opposed to accusing or attacking someone.
Yeah, let's pause on that a minute, because we're talking about skills here too. And I brought up a very tender situation that's intense, that includes trauma and years of patterning and hiding and denial and avoidance, right? And so, just as Timothy said, in coupleship, there's topics that are really painful, and that maybe you need outside help to cultivate the skills, to have the healing within yourself, to gain the confidence to be able to talk about it. And then there are some definite communication skills. When you bring something to somebody, you can set them up for major defense by being accusatory and mean and short. And we can give an example of that. I don't want to use the situation I was going to, but it's much too tender to my heart. And that will set someone, if you're being judged, if you're in front of a judge, what do you need? A good defense. You need a good defense if you're in front of a judge. So nobody likes to be judged, and we all get defensive. That's an automatic reaction to being judged. So there is skill in taking something to somebody, especially when it's about them, in a way that can be the least triggering, the least judgmental. We aren't responsible for other people's triggers, but we can do our best to set them up to win with us. Meaning, if the outcome is healing, resolution, or connection. If you want disconnect, blame, and destruction, then that's fine too. That's a whole different result. But you need to have an idea of what you're wanting, because a lot of times skill is needed if you're wanting the connection.
Thinking of an example, I know I only work with a female, but she let me know this couple's doing well now. But there was a point in their relationship 14 years ago, they've been together 20 years, where the husband told himself a story, and the story was, she has cheated on me. And he had little bits of information that he felt proved that. But he was afraid to do some of the things that Heidi and I teach, which is to be honest, transparent, because he was sure that he was right and that she's been lying to him. Well, he would say, I love you, but she would feel that he didn't. And over the years, she finally got to a place where she was thinking, we should just get divorced. He should just move out. I don't feel him in the relationship. And finally, one day, he confessed and said, I think you had an affair 14 years ago. And she was able to look him in the eye and say, no, I did not. And he felt the impact of her truth. And then they got close together again. And he became much more open. When he said he loved her, she could feel it. And that's the type of thing that I think, whether it's with an individual trying to negotiate a salary with their boss, a raise, or whether it's someone in their family dynamic, child, an 18-year-old boy trying to get his mother to understand that she, that's the kind of thing that good communications work for, not just for couples, not simply the situation that I was just talking about, but honesty and talking about the things that are hard, the things our mind tells us, if I say this, I won't get love, or I will get rejected, or something bad will happen. That's the kind of thing that often a good coach or a good therapist can support you exploring, getting ready for, and then help you have that conversation with the party.
Yeah, I want to share about something that happened in my own coupleship in the last few days, if that is okay. That is just that, I think we all have secrets. We all have shame over things that are current or things that are from the past. And if we're feeling judged from someone, it's even going to be harder to tell the truth, right? We all like to say, be honest. And I think all of us, if we're honest with ourselves, can think of a time when we're afraid and we lied, or we withheld the truth, or we were afraid to bring it to that person out of fear of loss or fear of whatever. We did a call a long time ago on all those things, but I want to share how having relationship skills and holding space for somebody can show up differently. Because my partner and I had a situation like this in the last couple of days where I was triggered from something that happened. So I was really upset and really hurting and in my own stories. And he was triggered in his own way and afraid and feeling ashamed. And we both had to leave it for a day. So that's one skill, is sometimes when you can't resolve it and you don't have somebody to immediately mediate for you, you can stay connected. And we call it put it on the shelf. Can we put it on the shelf and not ignore each other, not go into silence, not go away? So that's a skill we use, is putting it on the shelf, but staying connected, reconnected, knowing that this thing isn't our whole relationship. And then when we circled back around to it, he came to me in vulnerability and shared something with me that was very deep and very hard for him to share, and something he never wanted to share. And I had a choice point. So these happen all the time in relationships. I had a choice point to go into my own pain body and be like, this is why I was so messed up yesterday, or to hold space and bring safety to somebody that was so tender and bringing me something very tender. And because I was able to do that, he felt not judged. And that's not something always I've done in our relationship. Sometimes I'll go right into my hurt and then we're both screwed, and vice versa. There's been times I've come to him and he's not been able to be there for me and it makes it worse. And then times I've come to him where he can just hold that safe space of non-judgmental and keeping the part that hurt me separate and hold space for him first and make sure that he's safe and thankful that he was able to reveal himself to me, even if I have my own stories. So the skill is holding empathy, creating safety for someone to be honest with you. If you want someone to be honest with you and you get mad every time they're honest with you, do you think they're going to keep coming to you and being honest? It's a hard thing. And then later, I can go back, which I did, and ask him to hold space for the parts that came up for me, separate from what he told me, So it was one time we navigated it really well. We don't always do that, just so you know. You don't have to be perfect.
So good. Yeah, I love the pause. Such an important and vital tool. You talked about both of you taking space. Sometimes that can be 15 minutes, sometimes it can be a week. And it's so helpful to let the other person or people involved know, I'm leaving the house for 15 minutes, I'll be back, and then we pick up this conversation. But the pause is such a great tool because when we're triggered, if we keep talking, things will escalate. We will say things that we regret, and we will trigger each other back and forth, and it becomes a verbal, hopefully not physical, abusive cycle in a way. And both people are doing it not because they mean to, but because they're hurting, and no one's actually able to face society talking. Once we can take a pause and come back, it helps us come to that frontal lobe, refreshed brain where we're able to think clearly. And Heidi was able to go, I have a choice here. The only reason she could think that way is she wasn't triggered. If she'd gotten triggered, the best thing she could have done is said, I need to take another break. Okay, he shared something vulnerable, something he has not shared before. I'm going to come back and just listen and offer empathy for that till he feels seen and heard. Then I'm going to see if it's okay for me to share my piece and hold that. And as we do that, it's really slowing patient down. We're paying attention to our body and our emotions. And one tool I would add is any conversation. What's your body doing? Right? Even now, as I was speaking, I could feel myself leaning forward. I could feel myself getting into the energy of what I was saying. And I can stay present and still speak and remain in physical alignment with my body and track and watch my body as I have a conversation with someone in order to know, oh, wow, what they just said actually didn't feel good. And I twisted a little bit. And to pay attention to that and to recognize that's a sign I'm getting triggered. Take a breath. Can I stay with it? If I can't stay with it, then come back to the basic tool of the pause. It's kind of like you're giving yourself a timeout. When I work with families, I really recommend no timeouts. I recommend time ins, right? Which can be a pause with our little 4-year-old together. We're just going to be quiet. We're just going to sit here for a little bit. Let's wait it out. Sometimes it might take 20 minutes. And then when you can see that you're not triggered and your 4-year-old's kind of back, then you can talk about how might we do this differently. It's like a time in pause.
Yeah, I want to say that pause is one of the most important relationship skills I've ever learned, because when we are in reaction and not response, we're in our reptilian brain or our unconscious mind, and we're not up here in the frontal lobe being conscious and cautious of how we're entering the relationship. And typically when we're in reaction, we cause disconnection and not connection. And when we're in response, we can still be honest and we can cause connection. And so I love the acronym. I was just reminded of this beautiful acronym. And you guys know I love my acronyms and my one-liners. And I want to give a shout out to recovery, because I hear from the recovery rooms most of these wonderful sayings. And we heard a great one the other day in our couples recovery group, and it was pause. And it's postponing action until serenity enters. So when you have a pause, you're postponing action until serenity enters. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that reminder. So that's a great skill to use.
I want to say hello, Alyssa, Ori, thanks for being here with us. And I was going to type out your acronym, and I realized that's not my skill to type out everything that you said. So if you feel like typing that in the chat box, Heidi, it's good. I think acronyms, Heidi brings them up a lot, are super helpful if they register, if they resonate, and and then that helps us hopefully in the moment actually do it, actually do the pauses she talked about.
Yeah, so I would love, so we shared how these same skills work with dying and families and hospice, and then we brought it in how they work with coupleship. I also want to say that with children, the same skill is a huge one of creating a safe space for honesty, right? So people think that it's the person's responsibility that's doing the talking or telling on themselves, like, well, it's all their responsibility to be honest. And I would disagree with that. I mean, it is and it isn't. So can you create a safe space in which they feel safe to come to you? And I have two grown daughters that are 20 and 22, and I've gotten a chance to be around their teenage friends when they were still living at home. And it was interesting observing, because my kids would bring the other kids and be like, hey, talk to my mom about that. And the kids would be like, I don't talk to my parents about this, but they would feel safe talking to me about it. And my kids felt safe talking to me about it. And it wasn't because I had no rules. It wasn't because I didn't tell them my opinion. I'm full of advice and opinions. It was because I made them feel not judged and accepted in whatever they were doing. And I come from a space, and again, this isn't 100%. I screw up just as much as anybody, but because I have these skills, I can hopefully course correct along the way. But creating that safety with children in which they can come to you and fail, they can come to you and they've made a mistake. They can come to you and have made a bad decision or be considering making a bad one. And can you hold a space of non-judgment in which you can safely tell them what you think is best, or what the consequence might be, and still giving them the space to choose and love them anyway?
Yeah. It's such a gift, isn't it? When we encounter someone who listens to us, receives what we're saying, even if it's really difficult or scary for us to share it, and then they're just curious and want to know more about it. They're neutral, they're not triggered, they're coming at us with love, true unconditional love. It makes us want to tell them more and open up more, tell them everything. That doesn't mean we don't get to have boundaries and say to someone, actually, I'm not okay with you doing that, or that doesn't feel good to me. I'd like to have a boundary there, right? We're not talking about letting someone over you, but really meeting someone in a desire to understand and a desire to know them, and creating an openness in which they can share, feel. That creates true intimacy, lasting intimacy, and connection.
So is there any stories that you can think of you'd like to bring up and wrap in which kind of skills that are the same for couples, that are the same in a family system or in a self journey even?
Yes, let's come to relationship with self. So, Heidi and I both teach people to actively listen to one another and then reflect back, and um, to not move forward with what's going on in their head, to change the topic, or say, but I remember when you did this, but to truly listen and with each other. A lot of us forget to do that with ourselves. We've got this internal roommate speaking constantly. Oh, there's a red live dot in the corner of the screen. It says 35 minutes, right? Just this chatter going on. Right? And if we actively listen to ourselves, it's about slowing down, moving that inner roommate back into their room, putting them to sleep if you, and truly listening to what's going on in my, what am I feeling, sensing, emoting in my body? If we can learn to tune into our body by ourselves and when we're in relationship with us, we have more accurate way about what's going on with us in the present and doing what I call integrating, bringing aspects of ourselves that want love and attention.
Timothy, you're frozen. Can somebody comment and tell me if he's just frozen for me?
I
Oh,
feel
you're
like we're
back.
back. It did get weird. Yeah,
Okay,
it
maybe
got
we
weird
both
there for a second.
froze.
I'm I'm basically just making an argument in simple. I'll keep it simple that the relationship with self is truly an important one. And relating with the body and the heart often helps us bypass the chatter that's going on in the mind and improves all of our conversations and all of our relationships, as well as the choices that we make by learning to listen into our body. What are we sensing? And our feelings. What am I feeling? Rather than going with what our mind is telling us. And it says he was frozen but good now.
You want to read that next comment too?
Chantel says, trust. I recently learned that one of my needs is to be able to trust myself. Great. I had never thought of that before. Isn't that interesting? I think a lot of us are looking for trust on the outside. And if we put our mirror up in front of us and we ask ourselves, do I fully trust myself? That's the best place to start with trust. And if we want to go deeper, we have a belief in a higher power. Do I fully trust a higher power or the force of the universe? The fact that this miracle exists beyond my creation. Do I even trust this creation? Um, but yes, do I trust myself? Do I trust myself to be honest? Do I trust myself to be compassionate? Do I trust myself to be happy? Do I trust myself to do my work? Do I trust myself to express my needs, wants, and desires fully without shame and guilt? There's so many areas and can use this word trust, examine our own habitual patterns and develop ones that bring a greater level of trust to ourselves. The more we trust ourselves, the more we love ourselves, the easier it is to relate with people without any sense of lack of self-worth, for example. Most of us, many people, are dealing with a lack of self-worth or a story that there's something inadequate. As we learn to trust ourselves, love ourselves, most of that melts away. We're able to walk into a room full of strangers and just be ourselves. Setting and holding boundaries equals trusting myself. Yes, good one.
Yeah, I
Heidi, you have
think,
something on that?
yeah, trusting yourself is super important. I mean, that's something that I used to blame other people. You've heard me say a million times, I have trust issues. I have all the evidence to tell you why I shouldn't be trust people in life. And I'm sure a lot of us do, right? And so one thing that I worked on a long time was trying to trust other people. And what I discovered was I needed to trust myself in relationship. I was somebody that stayed in relationship too long. I was somebody that didn't speak up for myself. And again, not 100%, but these were character defects that came up that really hurt me in relationship. And so when I can trust myself, I can know that if I have deal breakers coming up for a certain length of time and that I can leave. Before, I couldn't leave, and so I couldn't trust myself. I don't need to necessarily trust you if I trust me. It's wonderful to trust other people, but the first person you need to trust is yourself.
Yeah, you're one of my favorite things to work with people on is blind spots or the subconscious. So if I have a unmet need from my childhood where I want my mother or my father or both to pay attention to me and love me, and they really give me exactly everything I needed. This is a common story. I often will find myself or other adults who are seeking to get those childhood needs met in adult relationships, and they're not aware of it. Well, then you're not trustworthy, and you don't even know that you're not trustworthy, and you're behaving often in a codependent or in a avoidant or anxious way based on your family of origin story, and you're not aware that. So it's so wonderful to start working with attachment style or on their family of the different parts that are wanting to be integrated. And as people become aware of what they're doing, then they can accept it. Then they can choose to do differently. Now they're more trustworthy. And like Heidi said, nobody on the outside had to actually change. They're able to do what Chantal said in the post, which is trust that they can make their own boundaries to take care of themselves. And if someone keeps crossing those boundaries, they're capable of moving on, changing that works for them, meaning they can trust them. But there is this, for many people, I'm raising my hand, there are subconscious aspects of ourselves that are causing us to do things we're not even aware of. So thus, if we could step outside of ourselves and watch it, we'd go, that person's not trustworthy. They're saying one thing and they're doing another, and they're trying to get this met, and they don't even that. Wow, they're hurting themselves and they're hurting other people, and they're innocently doing it. They don't mean to be harmed. They're just unaware. So again, it's such a huge argument for my own work with my own teachers and my own therapists to continually work at integration and so habitual behavior. Where does it come from? How do I release it? How do I move into a place of greater awareness and trust with myself? And that way I'm more trustworthy for others. And thus intimacy and connection becomes more prevalent.
Love it. So I am thinking of, did we cover holding boundaries well enough, do you think? Not so much. So I'm thinking of holding boundaries. So setting and holding boundaries, trusting myself. So holding boundaries, when we don't hold a boundary, we lose trust in ourselves. And I think addiction is one of the biggest things I can relate to in every area of my life. I can relate to not trusting myself. But in addiction, it was the most damaging one that I did to myself. I've had plenty of things that were violations from other people at a young age that made me mistrustful. But when I was in addiction, and I know any of you guys that have been in addiction, you wake up in the morning, you don't want to do it again, whether it's eating or gambling or magazines or sex or alcohol or drugs. And you're like, you really, really believe with every part of yourself, you're not going to do that behavior again because you know that it hurts you. You have all the knowledge in your brain of the result, of the outcome, of how you don't want to do it again. And you believe it 100%. And then by 3 p.m., you've rationalized, talked yourself into, have so much anxiety and intolerance that you pick up whatever it is you are using. You have some relief, you have a little peace, and then you go through the whole cycle again. And the more times you go through it, and the more times you lied to yourself about not doing it, that you break trust. And so if you have a boundary, and this is especially important with children. So I'm talking about self. I had a boundary for myself and I broke it over and over and over again. So with children, if you have a boundary for them, like, if you don't get your homework done by 6 p.m., we're not going swimming on Saturday. and then they don't get their homework done by 6 p.m., but you take them swimming Saturday, you've broken trust with them. Even though you think you're being nice and you have a reason that you want to take them swimming, you just broke a boundary where they're not going to have the kind of safety, or the consequence isn't what you said it was going to be. And that's a way that trust can be broken with boundaries. Do you have anything to say on boundaries, Timothy? And
I,
trust?
I, I think that boundaries are an implicit part of relationship with ourselves and others. New Year's Eve resolutions, getting like boundaries, direction for ourselves. These are different words, but they imply the same thing. Boundaries are what create safety. They're what create progress. Um, they are a way of measuring our evolution, so many things. And I'm not talking about unnecessary boundaries, but if I have a boundary with myself, it's my job to maintain that boundary, nobody else's. If I have a boundary with other people, it's my job to maintain that boundary. If I say to my child, you don't get your homework done, we're not going to go swimming, that's my boundary to maintain, not the child's. The child's going to do everything probably to erode that boundary. It's hot. I can't do my homework. I'm too hot. If I go swimming, I'll do it. I promise. Then you go swimming, come home. And now we're in this like power dynamic. So I do think boundaries are something that are at the same time boundaries social. So at any time, sit down with ourselves or with our organization, revisit the boundary. Does it mean to be on time?
You're
What are
kind
the
of cutting in and
expectations?
out a little bit.
I think I'll stop there. You get it.
Okay. Thank you, Timothy. Do you guys have any other questions on boundaries?
Let's talk about relationship with spirit or with a greater power or nature if people don't want to go into the godly realm. Um, so don't get fixated on nothing wrong with religion. That's your swim. Not really talking about religion or dogma. Talking about love or the mystery of life, nature. A lot of us forget to maintain a relationship with the unknown. And I'm the first person to tell you right now, as much as Timothy Earle has learned and studied and thinks he knows, I don't really know anything in relationship to this great mystery that's going on around me and within me. And so I think it's important to develop a relationship with the unknown, with the mystery, with the divine, with love. And I'm going to make an argument for one of the greatest principles to this relationship is surrender, is faith, they call it, or trust. Um, why do I want to bring it up? Because it has helped me with my addictions. It has helped me with my relationships. This belief in a higher power, this relationship with God or with love or with nature has given me hope at times where I felt hopeless. Um, it's given me physical healing when I didn't know I could get physical healing. And it's allowed me to be more open to the mystery and the things that unfold as they unfold and brought more happiness into my life, which then affects all of my relationships with self and with others. So I would say meditation practices, yoga, hiking in nature, taking a hot bath, journaling, communicating with the divine through prayer or meditation or work with medicine or um, all kinds of different modalities, dance. Uh, find things in your life that help you continually cultivate and maintain your relationship with mystery or with the divine or with the unknown because it's constantly happening. None of us know what's going to happen after this call ends. It's going to be what it's going to be. And we may think we have an idea. I'm going to go got my kids, it's going to be like this, and then boom, you get a flat tire. Or, oh, wow, you run into a friend from high school that you haven't seen in 20 years. The mystery is constantly surprising us. And so I encourage you to develop a relationship with a higher power, with a greater unknown. And the last thing I'm going to say about that is we have this blessed thing called life. And most of us like to believe that we have an unlimited amount of time to live. And so I would encourage you as well to develop a relationship with the end of life, or with what Heidi was talking about at the beginning of the call, with death, because death will inform you as to how you want your relationships to be and what's important. And I often sit down and go, okay, who do I need to speak to? If I only had one more day here, who do I want to speak to? What do I want to tell them? The list gets pretty long, but I usually do the top three. And I make sure I reach out to my daughter or my partner or whoever and say, hey, I'd like to tell you something. Maybe it's an appreciation. Maybe it's something I need to clear and get out of the way so I don't hold it for 14 years like that husband that I talked about.
So I love the topic of higher power, cultivating a relationship, and I'm going to tie it into a relationship skill. And this is something that I really have just started cultivating this year for myself. I've always had some kind of relationship with the divine, with God, with religion, with, it's evolved over the years. It's been different things. But in regards to relationship, I really believe it's a relationship tool. And it's one that has helped my partnership immensely and has helped me immensely. And having it as a tool can look like many different things. So I'm just going to throw out some of the things that I use and that have been successful for me. We have a morning ritual of doing gratitude together and saying a couple's prayer that we wrote together for our relationship. So in our relationship system, we have our own individual selves and our own recovery. He has his own individual selves and his own recovery. And then we have the relationship, which is a whole entity that I never looked at as separate, or I don't know, I look at it in a really different way now. Like, we have this sweet thing that we've created, and can we give that to our higher power? Separate from our individual selves. We have, if you look at a three-legged stool, we have our higher power, we have us, each of us individual. There's three legs. If two of us are too enmeshed, you fall over. If it's only God there's no people, right? But if there's only one of us showing up in the relationship, it looks like that. So So it takes those three entities, as far as I'm concerned, to have a three-legged stool, which is quite balanced. And it's just a funny analogy. But so we have a couple's prayer that we do. And then looking at how I look for spirituality in life, listening to different things, or how I tune in to get guidance. I'm also doing that for my coupleship. So applying the things you use for your individual spirituality and applying it to your relationship with your child or with your partner, or with healing, like I told you about the hospice situation, like bringing higher power into that. How do we navigate this? How do we speak from our heart? How do we resolve this hurt? There's a lot of things where higher power can be an amazing tool in a partnership or in relationship in general.
Essential.
Huh?
And like, it's essential. It's essential. And like you said, it doesn't work without our humanness either, right? So, but this relationship with a higher power can really provide and bring so much joy and magic for life.
Yeah.
And again, if you're getting caught up on God or higher power, it's okay if you think about it as nature or love or the mystery. Try to use different modalities to speak to different.
I heard a lady say, breeze in the trees. And so I want to give a shout out again. If you're in any of these relationship scenarios, if you're ready to up your connection in relationships, call Timothy or I, text us or call us, go to our website. You can reach us that way, and we'll schedule a time with you. It's complimentary. It's a discovery session, and it's 20 to 30 minutes long, and you can see if you're fit to work with us and what you're exactly needing to work on. But take us up on that. And then also, we would love your feedback. If these real life talks are important to you, let us know. Like, say yes, please keep doing them. Timothy and I really love to contribute, and we're always having to consider, how do we spend our time in best contribution? And I would like to have feedback from you. If this is helpful, let us know it's helpful. If it's not helpful, say no big deal, we don't care, because we would like to know we're best spending our time, how we're contributing most to the world. So we love to have your feedback on that as well. And I want to just give a recap on the tools we went over tonight and the kinds of relationships you can use them in, just for fun. So one of them was the pause. So postpone action until serenity enters. Pause is a huge relationship skill, can be used in any relationship. Do you want to react to your boss when you're pissed off? Do you want to react to your children when they've done something that shocks you and you hurt them by judging them? Or do you want to pause and then come back with a response? So pause is a great skill that works for everyone. I'm going to read some of these comments and then we'll go over some more of the skills. So Amanda says they sure are helpful. Chantel, yes. Whoops. I learned about the importance of trusting yourself from you two a couple of months ago. Joan, I need to replace my guilt thoughts with new ways of living. Love it. Oh, yes, please keep doing them. I'm finding all these tools very useful. Thank you, guys.
And again, thank you so much. That just those comments alone really mean a lot to us and keep us going. So thank you. And also feel free to share this video through Facebook or your other Instagram or other modalities with other people that you think might be helpful, so that more people get to watch it. And you can find both on Heidi's YouTube channel and my YouTube channel talks pretty much in sequence and in order. The other things that we covered today, besides the pause, were obviously being vulnerable, being honest, sharing that which our mind says, oh, if I share this, I'm going to get in trouble, they're not going to like me, bad things will happen. To just go ahead and sit your person down or people down and talk with them. And again, this can be something that requires support. Sometimes there's a big enough topic, it's really a good idea to have a third person present who spoke to both parties separately, individually, and like Heidi shared in her story, helped people get ready for a crucial conversation. And another one we talked about was boundaries, that we're responsible for expressing our boundaries and maintaining our boundaries, and that boundaries can help us learn to trust ourselves and thus create safety and allow for greater intimacy, greater connection.
Yeah. And another thing we talked about, which is dear to my heart, is creating safety so those around you feel safer to be honest with you.
And active listening. So I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say next. I'm not getting defensive. I'm truly taking in information, and then I'm practicing empathy, being curious about what they're saying, really seeking to understand it intellectually and emotionally. And if in that sense, I should be able to repeat it back clearly and concisely. And I'm not going any further. I'm just really wanting my partner or my child or my family or whoever to know that I'm truly listening, truly hearing, I get it, that they're seen and heard. And that can also look like me holding space as Heidi. Wow, my partner's telling me something that's difficult for me to hear, but I'm really grateful for the honesty and the vulnerability. So before I launch into my shtick, I'm going to listen and appreciate them and let them know how much I respect them for sharing that which scares them and difficult to tell me. And I'm going to hold space. We hold space.
Yeah. So I think that's about all we have for tonight. I love this talk, Timothy. Thank you so much. I'm glad to have you back. And we will be here next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And tell your friends, pass on these videos, even the recordings. If you found it useful and you know somebody that could use it, send it to them as well. And we look forward to seeing you on the next call.
Namaste. Have a good night.